Today's video, I want to talk about a topic that I've been focusing on more and more recently, and it's being intentional about your time. It's something that we as a young generation are so struggling to do. We find ways to waste our time, but on a more fundamental and slightly more disturbing level, we find ways to waste our time unaccountably. What I mean by that is we keep on functioning in our lives without really holding our time accountable for what it is. Because the human mind is a very relative thing, right? The human body is a very relative thing. There's hardly anything very objective about it. So if you've spent a whole day and achieved only two things, if you give a lot of value to those two things, you will think that that day has been really productive, when actually it probably hasn't. So for example, for me, I like to go to gym. If I do a gym day, if I do gym later on in the evening, even if the rest of my day earlier was a complete waste of time, if I've done my gym at like 5 or 6 p.m., I might leave that gym thinking, right, well, it's the end of the day, it's 6 p.m. now. I've just finished a 1 hour gym session. I've achieved a lot. And I feel really pumped about myself because the body relatively thinks that, well, compared to what we did achieve before, which was nothing, at least we've achieved something. So let's just give ourselves a bravo. So you go home thinking, well, what a day achieved, right? And this happens on so many levels. Like, I'm talking about gym, but what if it comes to spending time on social media or chilling with your friends or even going shopping, going to a cafe, taking a couple of pictures, whatever it is. If you associate value to it, your brain thinks that you've spent your time well. And the problem with that is, even though there's nothing wrong with being happy about your life, would you not be happier if you used the remaining hours even better? Like if you spent 10 hours wasted in a day, but only spent 5 hours usefully, would you not wish you had made some use of those 10 hours and maybe feel more fulfilled about your life? And I want to make a quick distinguishment for what I'm trying to say here. I'm not saying that all time not spent working is wasted, which I think is an easy problem to take. I mean that all time not spent working and not spent gaining anything is wasted. A classic example, which is overused, would be like scrolling on social media. Like, you get nothing from that. Like, at least, like, if you were to spend your time out on the streets, taking pictures with some monument in a local city or whatever, right? Still, you get something from it. You've got pictures from it, you've got memories, maybe a good time, whatever. But scrolling on social media for 2 hours, just for example, you get nothing out of it. Like if I even asked you what you just saw, that typical question, right? What did you just see in the last 5 scrolls? You'd be like, I have no clue. So in my opinion, that is time that's properly, truly wasted because you spent that time of your life and got nothing out of it. So the reason I kind of want to talk about this is because I think it's kind of an epidemic with us younger lot where we find ways to justify time being wasted, but then constantly also degrade ourselves for wasting time in the first place, but not really going to the root problem, which is that we operate our lives in a way where we allow ourselves to waste time unaccountably. And that word unaccountably is really important, I think, because if we started to hold our time more accountable, like making a plan of what we just achieved in a day, then I think we'd have a better understanding of how we live our lives daily. Because even if you aren't the most organized person, even if you say, oh, I'm really spontaneous with what I do, okay, but if you sat at the end of your day and made a quick, on a piece of paper, made a quick note of what you did hour by hour, just off memory, then you would get a bigger picture of like, how many of these hours did I spend actually doing something worthwhile, and how many of those hours did I spend actually doing nothing at all. And so, for some examples for things that are worthwhile, in my opinion, because I think people just think work is worthwhile, but in my opinion, other things are worthwhile as well, like speaking to your partner in a relationship, going out shopping because you've got no food, going to play with friends, going to the pub with friends if you have to, networking, random researching if you want to. Even I'd say reading a book or doodling or going on a walk, all these things I'd say are worthwhile if done correctly. If you read a book for 6 hours of the day when you had other shit to do, well, then it's not really worthwhile, right? But if you read a book for 15 minutes because it helps you take your mind off things, well, fair enough. Same way, if you spent doodling for 4 hours because you were just brain dead and then later on were like, why the hell did I spend doodling 4 hours? Well, that's not really a useful use of your time. But if you spend doodling because you just want to take your mind off something for 5 minutes, well, then fair enough. Like, yeah, that's good, right? But then, in my opinion, there's other things that are complete wastes of time, like scrolling on social media, sitting there, wasting your time, wasting your mind. And even argue like scrolling on social media is not only a waste of your time, but it actually leaves you worse off than if you hadn't have done it. Like, for example, a waste of time like doodling, right? You spend your time wasted like 4 hours, but then at the end of it, you're just back to normal, right? But social media, if you spend 4 hours on social media, you leave at the end of the session like exhausted, like mentally drained. You don't have any more dopamine to give to the day. So how are you possibly going to find enjoyment in anything else if you're just basically at point zero? You don't have much dopamine left. You've basically used social media to deplete your whole social and like interest activity battery. So I think like the first stage I'm trying to do is make a note of what I'm getting done per hour. And it's actually opened my eyes. That's the reason I'm making this video, because it opened my eyes to holy shit, like I waste so much more time than I thought possible, mainly because of that relative thing that the brain just says, well, because you did two good things, let's give ourselves a pat on the back. And then when you realize that that's actually just relatively good compared to the shit you did the rest of the day, you realize, oh, damn, maybe I could use my time better. And when I said before, wasting 10 hours in a day, that wasn't just a number taken at random. I have spent some days where I'll reflect and be like, you know what? In a let's say I'm awake. I wake up at 7, for example, and I go to bed at midnight. That's what's my maths now. 17 hours, right? And if I do the maths, I realize I waste out of that 10 to 12 hours. Out of 17 hours, I've wasted 10 to 12, right? And then I broke it down further. So not all of the wastage was wastage. So some of them were like talking to my partner, some of them were going shopping, stuff like that. But still, when I broke that 10 hours further, I had wasted at least 4 to 5 hours of the 17 hours on actually like what I would consider completely wasted activity. So in my opinion, that's just a bit outrageous, but it opens your eyes, right? So what does your brain kind of pass on a daily basis? Because if every single day you're wasting on average 5 to 6 hours, that's a quarter of your day you're wasting. And your brain passes it off as going, well, we still had a kind of productive day, right? But like you had a kind of productive day, but then if you're wasting 6 hours of your day consistently, then that means you're wasting a quarter of your life consistently and still saying you had a productive life. If I just extrapolate it that way, which is a bit crazy when you look at the statistic, right? So one thing is noting it down, and I think the next step from that for me would be, right now that I have this kind of idea of how many hours a day I'm just like subconsciously almost on an automatic allowing myself to waste, I can now try to fill them in with stuff. So in the morning or the night before, ideally, making a plan for the next day that gives you time for wastage. Like, if you're going to travel from home to uni or uni to work or whatever, you have to give yourself time for that. If you're going to speak to your partner, that's fine. If you're going to go and meet your friends, that's fine. So give yourself time for that. Don't expect to work like a machine. But if you do know that you're going to waste 5 to 6 hours every single day, then maybe have a list of like additional things I'd like to get done kind of list. So like these are my actual to-do list. These are the things that I'm going to waste my time on today, like just like go with friends and just normal routine activities. And then if I do notice I'm in one of those periods of time where like I'm going to get nothing done, then I can reach into my things I would like to get done to-do list, which could be a hobby. Like if you have 5 6 hours a day free, you could spend that towards a hobby you've had. If you've wanted to learn a language, learn an art, start practicing for martial arts, learn a new skill in your music, whatever it is, you could definitely give like 1 hour a day to that, right? And then you'd leave better off. Even after a month, that's 30 hours you've put into that art, even if you spend just 1 hour a day, which you wouldn't have done if you didn't actually notice that you were leaving time unaccounted for. And you can put that into so many different perspectives. You can use that to make your friendships better. Like if you notice you have 5 to 6 hours a day, then maybe reach out to friends you've not spoken to in a long time. Maybe network better. Maybe send a couple of random messages to people. Like make that time more intentional. rather than allowing it to be lost. I think we should keep ourselves more accountable and responsible of the time we have given to us, and not allow it to just be lost on a whim because, like, well, like, don't be like the person who, like, consider, like, keeps on reminding yourself that, oh, just to make sure I don't get depressed, I'll allow myself to have a pat on the back. Like, that's good, but don't also allow yourself to have a pat on the back so many times that you become complacent with your time. So yeah, I think this kind of video was just me kind of reflecting and sharing, if possible, that concept I have of keeping your time accountable and living your life intentionally. I'm sure I've not covered everything, but that's the point of reflection, right? You only get deeper one stage at a time. And I think the first stage for me has been to first at least identify that I'm wasting time of my life. And to the point, it's like a quarter of my life I'm wasting. And I think what's even worse to me is that I'm wasting it and still telling myself I had a good day, because of the relativity of wasting time and, like, getting things done, like I explained before. So that's almost like a kick in the butt, right? Like, I'm wasting time and telling myself I had a good day, and it's like, what the hell? Whereas that remaining time, if I had used it, well, I don't know where I'd be right now. So making sure you first identify that we are wasting time, and it might be different for every single person. Then be making a note of how much time you are wasting to get a numerical value on it. So literally on the end of it doesn't take long. Just at the end of the day, make like a quick list of what the tasks were you got done, just roughly, just to get a gauge of how much hours you're genuinely wasting. I don't mean wasted as if, like, still fulfilling activities. I mean, like, genuinely wasted activities. And then I think once you have an idea of how many hours you're on average wasting, then starting to build into those hours something that you would like to get done, like a hobby, a new skill, an art. Speak to friends, like, use the time more intentionally. Even if you know you don't have any tasks you could possibly want to do in that time, at least still use it intentionally rather than allowing your brain to not use it at all and still calling it a successful day. And I think you taking that into account should lead to you living a more intentional life. I don't know. I'm only new to this journey, with this time management thing, but yeah, it's really eye opening, and I hope if someone else listens to this and finds that process interesting, something they can do and implement, and then perhaps learn more about themselves, then I would say that's a success. And then maybe 2 or 3 months down the line, we can see how our lives have changed now that we start living them more intentionally, and then we unlock that second layer of reflection when we notice something else has still gone wrong. So that's that for now. Thank you for listening.